The soft glow of a small lamp cast long dancing shadows across the quiet room, much like the flickering light of ancient campfires that once dotted a primal world. Before the grand cities rose from the dust, before maps were drawn, or empires dreamed, there was a time when the very concept of distance held a different weight. The wind, a constant traveler, carried the scent of unknown flowers from distant valleys, whispering tales of lands beyond the horizon. It hummed through ancient forests and across vast silent plains, a constant reminder of the unseen, the untouched. This unseen world, stretching beyond the immediate sight of early humans, held both mystery and promise. It was a world waiting to be explored, not by intent, but by the subtle, almost subconscious pull of curiosity and need. What unseen threads then began to bind these scattered nascent communities together across the vastness of an awakening Earth? In the earliest dawn of human history, before the steady rhythm of agriculture tied people to the land, life was a continuous journey. Small bands of hunter-gatherers, their movements dictated by the migrations of animals and the ripening of wild fruits, wandered through landscapes of immense untamed beauty. Imagine them pausing by a river, its waters glinting like scattered jewels under the noonday sun, or sheltering in caves that offered solace from the biting wind. Their world was immediate and tangible, the feel of the earth beneath their feet, the warmth of fire, the shared glance across a small circle of kin. Resources were localized. A particular type of flint for tools might only be found in one mountain range, or vibrant seashells might wash ashore on a single stretch of coast. These unique treasures, born of specific places, began to stir the first impulses of exchange, not out of commerce, but out of a shared, deep-seated human curiosity and the simple desire for something new, something beautiful, something useful that their own patch of earth did not provide. The genesis of trade was not a grand declaration, but a quiet, almost imperceptible shift in human interaction. Perhaps it began with a gesture, a hunter from the plains possessing a surplus of dried meat, encountering a family from the mountains holding exquisitely crafted stone tools. A silent offering, a cautious acceptance, a reciprocal gift. Over time, these chance encounters blossomed into deliberate, though still informal exchanges. Obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its sharp edges, might travel hundreds of miles from its source. Amber, with its warm golden glow, journeyed from distant shores, a testament to its beauty. Salt, a vital commodity, slowly made its way from inland deposits to coastal communities. These early paths were not roads, but a series of interconnected foot trails following animal tracks, river courses, or mountain passes, etched by the repeated passage of individuals and small groups, driven by the allure of a new resource or the promise of a reciprocal gift. It was a slow, organic growth, like the tendrils of a vine reaching out cautiously across an open field, seeking something to cling to, something to connect with. Yet this nascent web of exchange was fraught with peril. The very act of venturing beyond familiar hunting grounds meant confronting the unknown. Vast deserts stretched their shimmering mirages, hiding dangers and the relentless sun. Towering mountain ranges, their peaks perpetually capped with snow, presented formidable, almost insurmountable barriers. Dense, dark forests, alive with unknown sounds, could swallow a traveler whole. And always there was the uncertainty of encountering other human groups. Were they friend or foe? Each journey was an odyssey, a testament to courage and the desperate need or potent desire that compelled them forward. Tools were rudimentary. Survival was paramount, and the simple act of carrying goods over long distances was an arduous task, limiting the quantity and type of items that could be exchanged. A simple flint blade or a handful of decorative shells having traveled through such hardships became immeasurably precious, imbued with the tales of their long journey. Despite these immense challenges, the faint whispers of ancient paths persisted, growing slowly, almost imperceptibly, into faint trails. This primordial yearning to connect, to share, to acquire that which was unique and valuable, laid the very first foundational stone for what would one day become the grand arteries of the Silk Road. It was a testament to the enduring human spirit, a quiet promise whispered across vast empty spaces that no matter the distance, no matter the difficulty, humanity would always find a way to reach out, to touch, to connect with the world beyond its immediate horizon. This gentle, persistent impulse, born in the deep past, became the soft, enduring hum beneath the grand symphony of future civilizations. The gentle murmur of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, flowing like lifeblood through the Fertile Crescent, was the constant symphony of a world on the cusp of something extraordinary. Here, under a sky that often shimmered with a brilliant hot sun, the scattered human settlements began to coalesce, drawn by the promise of abundant water and rich soil. One could almost hear the quiet hum of early village life, the rustle of reeds in the marshlands, and the distant cries of animals being herded. It was a landscape of stark contrasts. Fertile riverbanks giving way to vast empty deserts where the air hung heavy and still. This was the place where the nomadic wanderings of the early humans began to give way to permanence, where hands that once hunted now molded mud into bricks, stacking them into the first lasting homes, the first communal granaries, and the first humble temples. The sun, a silent witness, warmed the mud brick walls, and the moon, a patient observer, illuminated the dreams of people settling down, dreaming of bounty, and unknowingly dreaming of connection beyond their immediate fields. In this ancient land, nestled between the two great rivers, the true seeds of organized civilization were sown. Communities learning to harness the unpredictable floods and channel water to their fields began to produce a surplus of grain enough to feed more than just their own families. This abundance brought forth a new rhythm to life, allowing some individuals to step away from the fields and specialize. There were now potters shaping clay into useful vessels, weavers spinning fibers into cloth, and eventually smiths coaxing metal from reluctant ores. Yet the land, though fertile, lacked many essential resources. Timber for roofing had to be brought from distant mountains. Valuable metals like copper and tin were found far away, and precious stones for adornment or sacred objects existed only in remote quarries. This inherent imbalance between abundant food and scarce raw materials created an irresistible pull, a silent mandate for exchange that went beyond simple barter. As villages grew into towns, and then into the very first city-states, the need for these distant resources intensified. Simple dugout canoes plied the gentle currents of the rivers, laden with sacks of grain or bundles of reeds heading downstream to exchange for timber or stone. Overland. The first rudimentary carts, pulled by oxen or donkeys, began to carve deeper tracks across the plains, carrying goods to neighboring settlements. Merchants, no longer just farmers with a surplus, emerged as a distinct class. Their lives dedicated to the perilous journey of acquiring and distributing goods. They learned to navigate by the stars, to read the subtle signs of the land, and to bargain in foreign tongues. To manage these increasingly complex transactions, a revolutionary system of writing cuneiform began to emerge, first for keeping track of temple offerings, and then, crucially, for recording trade agreements and inventories. The first organized routes were thus born, not just faint animal trails, but recognized pathways connecting places of resource scarcity to places of surplus, driven by the expanding needs of burgeoning urban centers. However, this burgeoning system of organized exchange was not without its trials and tribulations. Competition for control of vital resources and lucrative trade routes often led to friction, even outright conflict, between the ambitious city-states that dotted the Mesopotamian landscape. Walls rose higher, armies became more organized, and the journeys of merchants grew increasingly dangerous. Beyond the threat of rival cities, the natural world itself presented formidable obstacles. Sudden violent floods could wipe away carefully accumulated goods, and the vast parched deserts, while offering faster routes, could claim the unprepared with their unforgiving heat and lack of water. Bandits preying on the valuable cargoes lurked along less protected paths, turning a profitable venture into a deadly gamble. The early forms of trade were fragile, subject to the whims of nature, and the shifting allegiances of emerging powers, constantly challenging the resilience and ingenuity of those who dared to venture beyond their home territories. Yet despite the inherent risks and the constant threat of disruption, the pathways forged in this fertile crescent laid the indelible groundwork for all future trade. The very act of specializing labor, of recording transactions, and of establishing dedicated routes for the movement of goods between distant communities marked a profound leap in human organization. It wasn't just physical goods that traveled along these early veins of commerce. Ideas, technologies, and beliefs silently journeyed too, shaping the very fabric of early civilizations. The techniques for working copper, the understanding of celestial movements, even the whispers of ancient stories spread from one nascent city to another. In the glow of the twilight, as the last rays of sun touched the ziggurats, one could almost feel the enduring human spirit, forever seeking to connect, to understand, and to build a world larger than itself. One exchanged object, one shared idea at a time. The morning light, a soft, diffused gold, painted the landscape of ancient Egypt, touching the still, unhurried waters of the Nile. One could almost smell the rich, life-giving silt carried by the river, mingling with the dry, earthy scent of the surrounding desert. In the distance, the faint, rhythmic tap of hammers on stone echoed across the vast plains, a testament to the immense structures slowly rising towards the sky. The sight of a solitary felucca, its triangular sail catching the gentle breeze gliding effortlessly along the river's timeless current, encapsulated the very essence of this unique civilization. The Nile, a constant benevolent artery, nourished the land and its people, shaping their world and their destiny. It was a cradle of stability, where the annual floods, predictable and bountiful, allowed for a rhythm of life unlike any other, creating a desire for beauty and permanence that would send its people far beyond their fertile valley. Ancient Egypt, a civilization born from the embrace of a single river, grew in relative isolation from the wider world for much of its early history. Surrounded by vast, unforgiving deserts to the east and west, and formidable cataracts to the south, the Nile itself became its primary highway and protector. This unique geography fostered a sense of stability and self-sufficiency, yet it also instilled a deep yearning for the rare and beautiful materials that their own fertile lands did not possess. From the earliest dynasties, the pharaohs, seen as divine rulers, commanded immense resources and labor not only for the construction of their monumental tombs and temples, but also for the acquisition of exotic goods. They sought gleaming gold from the sun-drenched lands of Nubia, fragrant frankincense, and myrrh from the mythical land of Punt, and sturdy cedar timber from the distant forests of the Levant. This desire for luxury and sacred materials ignited a new era of exploration and organized expeditions. While the Mesopotamians had navigated rivers and plains, the Egyptians mastered the art of sailing. Their shipwrights crafted elegant, sturdy vessels capable of both riverine travel and eventually daring voyages across the Red Sea and along the Mediterranean coast. Pharaohs like Hatshepsut famously sponsored grand expeditions to Punt, depicted in vivid detail on temple walls, showing fleets of ships laden with precious resins, exotic animals, and foreign wonders. These weren't mere trading ventures. They were expressions of imperial power and divine will, showcasing the pharaoh's ability to command resources from the edges of the known world. Along the Nile barges transported granite blocks, foodstuffs, and crafts, creating a bustling internal network, while specialized mining expeditions ventured deep into the eastern desert, seeking amethyst, turquoise, and copper, guarded by armed escorts and guided by seasoned prospectors. However, these ambitious ventures into the wider world were not without significant dangers and periodic upheavals. The desert journeys were brutal, with relentless heat-scarce water, and the constant threat of banditry or hostile nomadic tribes. Sea voyages faced unpredictable storms, uncharted waters, and the isolation of distant shores. Furthermore, Egypt's long history was punctuated by periods of internal unrest, where competing dynasties or regional governors disrupted the smooth flow of goods and resources. The temptation of Egypt's immense wealth also drew the attention of neighboring powers, leading to conflicts in Nubia or the Levant, as empires vied for control of vital trade routes and resource-rich territories. Maintaining control over these distant supply lines required not just ingenuity and courage, but also military might. As the pharaohs often sent armies to secure mines or protect merchant convoys, turning trade routes into corridors of strategic importance. Yet from the fertile banks of the Nile, a profound legacy of connection and exploration was woven into the fabric of the ancient world. The Egyptians, with their sophisticated navigation, shipbuilding, and logistical organization, pushed the boundaries of human reach, demonstrating the power of a centralized state to orchestrate long-distance exchange on an unprecedented scale. Their quest for both the sacred and the beautiful led them to interact with diverse cultures, bringing back not only material wealth, but also new ideas, technologies, and artistic influences that enriched their own civilization. As the last rays of the setting sun would paint the colossal statues and pyramids in hues of deep gold and purple, one could almost feel the enduring spirit of a people who, though rooted in their blessed valley, always looked beyond, dreaming of distant lands and the treasures they held, allowing the silent currents of the Nile to carry not just their boats, but their aspirations far out into the wider world. Under the relentless, shimmering heat of the Indian subcontinent, where the powerful Indus River carved its path through sun-baked plains, a remarkable civilization once flourished, a silent testament to ancient ingenuity. One could almost feel the dry dust on the air, hear the distant, unseen rush of the river, and imagine the quiet, orderly life within their grand cities. These urban centers, built of uniform fired brick, stood with an understated majesty, their streets laid out in perfect grids, their drainage systems marvels of ancient engineering. Unlike the towering pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, no monumental statues of kings or gods dominated their skylines. Instead, there was a sense of communal harmony, a quiet focus on the practicalities of life, and the subtle rhythmic hum of commerce. The air might have carried the scent of spices, the murmur of a bustling market, or the quiet click of carnelian beads being sorted, hinting at a world deeply connected, though its secrets remain largely unspoken. This sophisticated civilization, known as the Harappan or Indus Valley civilization, stretched across a vast expanse encompassing parts of modern-day Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. Flourishing from approximately 2500 to 1900 BCE, its people built impressive cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, characterized by their remarkable urban planning, advanced sanitation systems, and standardized brick sizes. Their society appeared to be remarkably egalitarian, with no clear evidence of a ruling elite or vast social disparities visible in their architecture. Instead, the focus seemed to be on communal well-being and, crucially, on extensive trade. Their geographic location placed them at a pivotal crossroads ideally situated to connect the mineral-rich highlands to the north and west with the fertile river valleys and coastal regions. The heart of the Harappan world beat with the pulse of exchange. While their written script remains undeciphered, countless small, intricately carved steatite seals offer tantalizing glimpses into their commercial life. These seals, bearing images of animals and mysterious symbols, were likely used to mark ownership of goods perhaps pressed into clay tags attached to bundles of commodities. Their cities were warehouses of traded goods copper from the Aravalli Hills, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian beads crafted with exceptional skill and timber from distant forests. Evidence of standardized weights and measures found throughout their sites suggests a highly organized economic system. Beyond overland routes, the Harappans were also skilled mariners. Their distinctive dockyards at Lothal speak of ancient sea routes, particularly with Mesopotamia, where Harappan seals and artifacts have been discovered, indicating a vibrant maritime connection across the Arabian Sea. Bowls of their grain, bales of their cotton, and the artistry of their beadwork traveled far, exchanging for gold, silver, and other exotic materials, weaving the Indus Valley into the broader tapestry of the ancient world. However, around 1900 BCE, the vibrant pulse of the Indus Valley civilization began to fade. The reasons for its decline remain one of history's great mysteries, a silent withdrawal from the grand stage of ancient empires. Theories whisper of environmental changes, the drying up of rivers that once nourished their cities, or perhaps catastrophic floods that overwhelmed their meticulously planned settlements. Shifting tectonic plates might have altered river courses, turning fertile lands into arid zones. Another thought suggests the possible disruption of their extensive trade networks, perhaps due to political instability in Mesopotamia, or shifts in demand for their unique goods, slowly choking the economic lifeblood of their urban centers. Over time, the great cities were gradually abandoned, their advanced drainage systems falling silent, their carefully laid streets reclaimed by the dust. The sophisticated script, once a vital tool of commerce and communication, became lost, taking with it the voices and stories of an entire civilization, leaving only the silent echoes of their intricate seals. Yet even in its quiet fading, the Indus Valley civilization left an indelible mark on the historical memory, a whisper across the millennia. Its sophisticated urban planning, its apparent peacefulness, and its widespread trade networks stand as a powerful reminder of humanity's early capacity for complex societal organization and far-reaching connection. Though their language remains a secret, and their ultimate fate a poignant mystery. The very existence of their standardized weights, their beautiful beadwork, and their unique seals speak volumes about a people who valued order, craftsmanship, and the art of peaceful exchange. As the sun sets over the arid plains where these great cities once thrived, one can almost sense the enduring silence, a poignant reflection on how even the grandest of human endeavors can gently recede, leaving behind only the most beautiful, enigmatic echoes waiting patiently to be heard across the vast expanse of time. Deep within the mist-shrouded valleys and fertile river plains of ancient China, where the wind carried the rustle of mulberry leaves and the soft, almost imperceptible hum of countless tiny lives, a profound secret was being woven into existence. The air itself might have felt hushed, laden with the quiet dedication of hands that tended to delicate creatures, turning their simple cocoons into threads of shimmering beauty. Imagine the gentle steam rising from pots as the cocoons were carefully softened, or the rhythmic whir of early spinning wheels drawing forth a fiber unlike any other, This was a land often isolated by towering mountains and vast deserts, fostering a unique culture and a deep connection to its own ingenious discoveries. Under the serene gaze of the moon and the steady warmth of the sun, a material of extraordinary lightness and luster began to emerge, a treasure so exquisite its value would one day span the entire known world. For centuries, ancient China, nestled between formidable natural barriers, developed its civilization along the Yellow and Yangtze rivers with remarkable autonomy. From the earliest Neolithic villages to the formative dynasties like the Shang and Zhou, the people cultivated a distinctive way of life marked by reverence for ancestors, intricate bronze work, and complex philosophical thought. It was within this rich cultural tapestry that the secret of silk, a marvel of the natural world, was discovered. Legend whispers that it was the Empress Leizu, wife of the mythical Yellow Emperor, who around 2700 BCE inadvertently dropped a silkworm cocoon into her tea. As she tried to retrieve it, a fine, lustrous thread began to unwind. This serendipitous moment unveiled the potential of the silkworm, a creature whose unassuming life cycle held the key to unparalleled textile luxury. The discovery of silk was not merely about beauty, it was about transforming a humble insect's creation into a symbol of unparalleled status and wealth. The process of sericulture, the cultivation of silkworms, was meticulously developed and perfected. It involved carefully nurturing silkworms on a diet of mulberry leaves, allowing them to spin their protective cocoons, and then carefully unwinding the unbroken threads. Each cocoon, seemingly fragile, held hundreds of meters of continuous filament. The resulting fabric was light, warm, soft to the touch, and shimmered with a unique iridescence that no other fiber could replicate. Such was its allure that silk quickly became reserved for royalty and high-ranking officials within China, used for ceremonial robes, banners, and even as a form of currency. Its production became a closely guarded state secret, punishable by death for anyone who dared to reveal it or smuggle silkworm eggs or mulberry seeds out of the empire. Despite its immense value, the very nature of silk production, with its dependence on specific mulberry trees and the delicate silkworms, presented its own unique challenges for expansion and distribution. The process was labor-intensive, requiring constant care and specific environmental conditions, making it difficult to scale quickly. Moreover, within China itself, a land often fragmented by warring states and internal conflicts, transporting such a precious and fragile commodity over long distances was fraught with peril. Bandits lurked along less protected paths, and rival factions might seize valuable shipments. Maintaining the secrecy of sericulture also meant that early internal trade was carefully controlled, with distribution often limited to imperial use or as diplomatic gifts. The desire to keep the secret protected from prying foreign eyes meant that the internal market, while vibrant, was contained, making the grand potential of silk as a global commodity still an unspoken dream confined within the vast borders of the Middle Kingdom. Yet this carefully guarded secret, born from the humble silkworm in the quiet valleys of ancient China, was destined to become the very thread that would weave together continents. The inherent preciousness of silk, its unique beauty and comfort, created a demand that transcended cultures and geographies. Even in its early localized trade and guarded production, silk was already forging a profound identity for China, distinguishing it in the eyes of the distant world as a land of unparalleled luxury and refined craftsmanship. As the evening stars began to twinkle over the ancient landscape, one could almost imagine the quiet determination of those early artisans, unknowingly setting in motion a story that would one day connect entire empires, all stemming from the delicate, shimmering gift of a tiny creature. Across the vast, sun-drenched plains and rugged mountains of the ancient Near East, A new kind of rhythm began to emerge, not the quiet hum of a river, nor the silent mystery of a lost city, but the steady measured beat of hooves on well-maintained earth. One could almost feel the sheer scale of the land stretching endlessly towards the horizon, where the air carried the scent of dry earth and distant spices. In the heart of this sprawling landscape, monumental palaces of polished stone rose their intricate carvings, telling tales of a powerful unifying vision. The road beneath, carefully surveyed and built, seemed to stretch into eternity, a silent testament to an empire's ambition. Along these ribbons of packed earth, the quiet passage of messengers and the murmur of laden caravans became a new kind of song, connecting distant peoples under a single overarching authority. The twilight often found weary travelers resting at well-appointed stations, watching the stars emerge, knowing that a vast network of connections now bound their disparate worlds together. The curtain rose on the mighty Achaemenid Persian Empire, a realm of unprecedented scale and ambition, which flourished from around 550 to 330 BCE. Born from the brilliant military and administrative genius of figures like Cyrus the Great and Darius the Smart, this empire eventually stretched from the sun-baked deserts of Egypt to the fertile plains of India, encompassing a breathtaking diversity of peoples, languages, and cultures. Unlike earlier empires, the Persians understood that true power lay not just in conquest, but in efficient governance and seamless connection. They sought to rule by fostering a degree of autonomy among their conquered peoples, allowing them to retain their customs and beliefs provided they paid tribute and acknowledged the great king's authority. This emphasis on organization and integration, rather than mere subjugation, laid the groundwork for a new kind of interaction across vast distances, a silent weaving of threads that would eventually form the grand tapestry of interconnected trade routes. At the very heart of this vast administrative machine was a revolutionary concept, the royal road. More than just a path, it was a meticulously planned and maintained network, primarily designed to facilitate rapid communication across the empire. The most famous segment stretched for over 1,600 miles from the city of Susa in Persia to Sardis in Anatolia, a testament to engineering and foresight. Along this route, every 15 miles or so lay post stations with fresh horses and accommodations for royal messengers, allowing official dispatches to travel at incredible speeds, reaching distant corners of the empire in mere days. While primarily for imperial use, the royal road inadvertently became a lifeline for trade. Security along these routes enforced by imperial garrisons dramatically reduced the risks of banditry and made overland travel far safer than ever before. Caravans laden with goods, textiles, precious metals, spices, and other commodities followed in the wake of the imperial messengers, knowing that the journey was now more secure, more predictable. The very act of collecting tribute from various satrapies also became a form of organized trade, as local products flowed towards the imperial center, and in turn, imperial goods and influences spread outwards. However, the immense scale of the Persian Empire and its ambitious road network also presented formidable challenges. Maintaining such a vast infrastructure across diverse terrains from searing deserts to rugged mountains required constant effort and considerable resources. Internal revolts, often fueled by local ambitions or resistance to imperial demands, could disrupt the flow of goods and communication, turning once safe passages into dangerous zones. The sheer distance meant that decisions from the imperial center took time to propagate, and local governors sometimes operated with a dangerous degree of autonomy. Ultimately, the empire's vastness became its vulnerability. The strain of managing such an expansive domain, coupled with external threats and internal political maneuvering, eventually led to its decline. The Grand Network. though resilient, could not withstand the relentless, focused assault of Alexander the Great's armies, whose conquests would sweep across the empire, bringing an end to the Achaemenid dream of a unified world. Yet, as the dust of conquest settled, the enduring legacy of the Persian royal road remained. It was a profound demonstration of how centralized power, when focused on infrastructure and communication, could profoundly transform the movement of goods, people, and ideas across vast landmasses. The Persians had set a powerful precedent for future empires, showing that well-maintained routes were not merely paths, but the very veins and arteries of an interconnected world. Though their empire eventually fell, the meticulous planning of their roads, the security they offered, and the way they connected disparate regions laid an essential foundation for the more extensive overland trade networks that would follow. As the evening stars began to shimmer over the ancient Persian lands, one could almost feel the silent hum of those long-vanished roads, whispering tales of grand ambitions and the unintentional gift they offered to the quiet, persistent spirit of commerce, linking distant lands with invisible threads of human connection. The air in the western reaches of Asia once vibrated with a new, insistent sound, the rhythmic march of legions, the distant clamor of battle, and soon the sharp, clear cadence of Greek being spoken in lands that had known only Persian and local tongues. One could almost feel the earth tremble under the swift passage of a mighty army, its glinting bronze and iron a stark contrast to the dust of ancient roads. Under a vast, indifferent sky, new cities bearing familiar names began to rise their architectural lines, echoing distant Western ideals, even as they absorbed the ancient traditions of the East. This was a moment of profound transformation, a grand collision of worlds that, through the chaos of conquest, inadvertently forged unprecedented pathways for goods and, more importantly, for ideas. The very landscape seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the birth of a new cultural horizon, a bridge being slowly, almost imperceptibly, extended across vast distances. The stage was set by the extraordinary whirlwind conquests of Alexander the Great. From 334 to 323 BCE, this young Macedonian king swept eastward, overturning the mighty Persian Empire and pushing his armies into the heart of Central Asia and as far as the Indus Valley. His ambition was not merely military. It was to forge a new, unified world, one where Greek culture, language, and thought would become universal. Though his vast empire fragmented quickly after his death, it left an enduring legacy in the form of the Hellenistic kingdoms that succeeded him. The most relevant to the future Silk Road was the Seleucid Empire, which inherited vast territories stretching from the Mediterranean to the borders of India, essentially taking over the heart of the Persian network. These Hellenistic rulers, though often engaged in dynastic struggles, established new cities and military outposts, transforming regions that were once remote into bustling centers of commerce and culture, unknowingly preparing the ground for the global connections to come. Alexander's conquests, though violent in their execution, inadvertently facilitated a dramatic expansion of intellectual and commercial horizons. With his armies came Greek architects, engineers, scholars, and merchants. The numerous Alexandrias founded across his empire from Egypt to Afghanistan became vital urban centers, not just military garrisons, but thriving commercial hubs where goods from east and west met and exchanged. The Greek language. Koine Greek became a lingua franca across these vast territories, simplifying communication for traders and administrators alike. Greek philosophy, art, and architectural styles blended with local traditions, creating the rich tapestry of Hellenistic culture. This cultural fusion wasn't just aesthetic. It deeply influenced the flow of knowledge and technology. Merchants from the Mediterranean now had direct, albeit often dangerous, routes into Central Asia, encountering and exchanging with new peoples and goods. This unprecedented intermingling of Hellenic and Eastern elements laid down a vital cultural bridge, making the vast distances feel less foreign, preparing the ground for more fluid interactions. However, the ambitious dream of a unified Hellenistic world proved difficult to sustain. The successor kingdoms were plagued by constant warfare as rival generals and their descendants vied for power, leading to perpetual instability across their vast domains. The sheer size of the Seleucid Empire in particular made centralized control a constant struggle. Internal rebellions, such as the emergence of the Parthians in the east, chipped away at their territories, weakening their grip on vital trade routes. Furthermore, the rise of new powerful entities like the Roman Republic in the west and the burgeoning empires in the east, like the Parthian, and later the Kushan, gradually eroded Hellenistic dominance. The focus shifted from grand unifying visions to defensive strategies, and the once vibrant cultural exchange became more localized, influenced by the ebb and flow of regional powers. The grand imperial design, which had briefly stitched together East and West, began to fray at the edges, leaving behind a complex patchwork of independent states. Yet as the last rays of Hellenistic power faded in the East, their legacy, a silent and profound one, continued to shape the world. The network of cities they founded, the common language they spread, and the cultural intermingling they fostered created an enduring infrastructure for future connections. The pathways carved by Alexander's armies, though paved with conquest, became routes for peaceful commerce and the silent, invaluable exchange of human ideas. The seeds of Greek thought and artistry, planted in distant lands, continued to grow subtly, influencing the aesthetics and philosophies of new civilizations. As the evening sky deepened over the lands once touched by Hellenistic dreams, one could almost hear the quiet echo of Greek voices in ancient bazaars, a testament to how even the most ambitious of political designs can inadvertently pave the way for the slow, persistent, and ultimately more enduring story of human connection through trade and cultural sharing. The air in the western reaches of Asia once vibrated with a new, insistent sound, the rhythmic march of legions, the distant clamor of battle, and soon the sharp, clear cadence of Greek being spoken in lands that had known only Persian and local tongues. One could almost feel the earth tremble under the swift passage of a mighty army, its glinting bronze and iron a stark contrast to the dust of ancient roads. Under a vast, indifferent sky, new cities bearing familiar names began to rise, their architectural lines echoing distant Western ideals even as they absorbed the ancient traditions of the East. This was a moment of profound transformation, a grand collision of worlds that through the chaos of conquest inadvertently forged unprecedented pathways for goods and, more importantly, for ideas. The very landscape seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the birth of a new cultural horizon, a bridge being slowly, almost imperceptibly, extended across vast distances. The stage was set by the extraordinary whirlwind conquests of Alexander the Great. From 334 to 323 BCE, this young Macedonian king swept eastward, overturning the mighty Persian Empire and pushing his armies into the heart of Central Asia and as far as the Indus Valley. His ambition was not merely military, it was to forge a new, unified world, one where Greek culture, language, and thought would become universal. Though his vast empire fragmented quickly after his death, it left an enduring legacy in the form of the Hellenistic kingdoms that succeeded him. The most relevant to the future Silk Road was the Seleucid Empire, which inherited vast territories stretching from the Mediterranean to the borders of India, essentially taking over the heart of the Persian network. These Hellenistic rulers, though often engaged in dynastic struggles, established new cities and military outposts, transforming regions that were once remote into bustling centers of commerce and culture, unknowingly preparing the ground for the global connections to come. Alexander's conquests, though violent in their execution, inadvertently facilitated a dramatic expansion of intellectual and commercial horizons. With his armies came Greek architects, engineers, scholars, and merchants. The numerous Alexandrias, founded across his empire from Egypt to Afghanistan, became vital urban centers, not just military garrisons, but thriving commercial hubs where goods from east and west met and exchanged. The Greek language. Koine Greek became a lingua franca across these vast territories, simplifying communication for traders and administrators alike. Greek philosophy, art, and architectural styles blended with local traditions, creating the rich tapestry of Hellenistic culture. This cultural fusion wasn't just aesthetic, it deeply influenced the flow of knowledge and technology. Merchants from the Mediterranean now had direct, albeit often dangerous, routes into Central Asia, encountering and exchanging with new peoples and goods. This unprecedented intermingling of Hellenic and Eastern elements laid down a vital cultural bridge, making the vast distances feel less foreign, preparing the ground for more fluid interactions. However, the ambitious dream of a unified Hellenistic world proved difficult to sustain. The successor kingdoms were plagued by constant warfare, as rival generals and their descendants vied for power, leading to perpetual instability across their vast domains. The sheer size of the Seleucid Empire in particular made centralized control a constant struggle. Internal rebellions, such as the emergence of the Parthians in the east, chipped away at their territories, weakening their grip on vital trade routes. Furthermore, the rise of new powerful entities like the Roman Republic in the west and the burgeoning empires in the east, like the Parthian and later the Kushan, gradually eroded Hellenistic dominance. The focus shifted from grand unifying visions to defensive strategies, and the once vibrant cultural exchange became more localized, influenced by the ebb and flow of regional powers. The grand imperial design, which had briefly stitched together east and west, began to fray at the edges, leaving behind a complex patchwork of independent states. Yet as the last rays of Hellenistic power faded in the east, their legacy, a silent and profound one, continued to shape the world. The network of cities they founded, the common language they spread, and the cultural intermingling they fostered created an enduring infrastructure for future connections. The pathways carved by Alexander's armies, though paved with conquest, became routes for peaceful commerce and the silent, invaluable exchange of human ideas. The seeds of Greek thought and artistry, planted in distant lands, continued to grow, subtly influencing the aesthetics and philosophies of new civilizations. As the evening sky deepened over the lands once touched by Hellenistic dreams, one could almost hear the quiet echo of Greek voices in ancient bazaars. A testament to how even the most ambitious of political designs can inadvertently pave the way for the slow, persistent, and ultimately more enduring story of human connection through trade and cultural sharing. From the heart of ancient China, from the bustling gilded palaces of Chang'an, where the air hummed with the quiet industry of a powerful empire, a new longing began to stir. One could almost feel the weight of silk robes rustling, hear the distant clang of bronze bells, and sense the grand scale of an empire stretching vast and unified. But beyond the settled fields and familiar mountain passes to the west lay a boundless, unknown deserts shimmered under a scorching sun. Mountains scraped the sky, and nomadic horsemen roamed freely. It was a region of both threat and tantalizing mystery. Yet from this place of stability and growing power, an intrepid spirit would soon venture forth not for conquest, but for alliance, unknowingly setting in motion the threads of the most legendary trade route in history. The moon, a silent witness, would light the path of these early envoys, guiding them into a vast, uncharted world, forever changing the way East and West would perceive each other. The Han Dynasty, succeeding the fleeting but foundational Qin, rose to become one of the most illustrious and enduring empires in Chinese history. Flourishing from 206 BCE to 220 CE, the Han established a stable and expansive realm characterized by remarkable technological innovation, administrative sophistication, and a flourishing cultural life. Its capital, Chang'an, was a city of immense grandeur, a center of learning governance and quiet ambition. However, despite its internal strength, the Han Empire faced a persistent and formidable threat. From its northern and western borders, the Xiongnu powerful nomadic confederations renowned for their equestrian skills and raiding prowess. These constant incursions posed a significant challenge to Han security and prosperity, prompting the emperor to seek new strategies beyond defensive walls. It was this strategic need that inadvertently ignited the official opening of the Silk Road. Around 138 BCE, Emperor Wu, a visionary and ambitious ruler, dispatched an official named Zhang Qian on a perilous mission to the western regions. His task was to seek out the Yuezhi, a nomadic people who had been driven west by the Xiongnu's, and propose a military alliance against their common enemy. Zhang Qian's journey was an epic of endurance and discovery. He was captured by the Xiongnu and held for over a decade, yet he escaped and continued his mission, eventually reaching Fergana Bactria and Sogdiana. His reports upon his eventual return to Chang'an electrified the imperial court. He spoke not merely of potential allies, but of powerful states with settled populations, advanced cultures, and most importantly, incredible resources previously unknown to the Han. He described heavenly horses from Fergana, stronger and faster than any in China, vital for military strength against the Xiongnu. He spoke of new plants, rich textiles, and the possibility of grand exchange. This intelligence transformed the Han's perception of the world beyond its borders, shifting from one of mere defense to one of active engagement and exploration. However, the path to sustained interaction with these western regions was fraught with immense difficulties. The Xiongnu remained a formidable barrier, requiring significant military campaigns to secure safe passage. The geography itself was a relentless adversary. The vast, desolate stretches of the Taklamakan Desert, known ominously as the Sea of Death, posed a constant threat of thirst and disorientation. The towering icy peaks of the Pamir Mountains, often called the Roof of the World, demanded extraordinary resilience from any traveler. Maintaining communication and supply lines to distant outposts and protectorates in the western regions was a monumental logistical challenge for the Han government. The initial desire for military alliances against the Xiongnu slowly broadened into an ambition for control over the trade routes themselves, leading to a complex interplay of diplomacy. Military campaigns and commercial ventures, often at great cost in lives and resources. Yet from the strategic ambitions of the Han Dynasty and the indomitable spirit of envoys like Zhang Qian, the legendary Silk Road was formally unveiled to the world. China, once inward-looking, now actively sought connection, its desire for security leading it to discover and embrace a wider world. The very act of sending official missions, establishing garrisons, and securing trade routes transformed sporadic informal exchanges into a structured network of unparalleled scale. Silk. The coveted secret of the East now had a defined path to journey westward, and in return, new goods, new ideas, new technologies, and new religions would flow eastward, enriching the Han Empire. As the gentle glow of dawn touched the ancient lands of China, one could almost feel the enduring reverberations of Zhang Qian's footsteps. A quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest journeys of connection are born from the unexpected paths taken in the pursuit of security, weaving together the silent aspirations of humanity across continents. The air in the bustling markets of Rome, and even within the quiet, sun-drenched courtyards of opulent villas, began to hum with a new, alluring whisper. One could almost feel the vibrant energy of the vast Roman Empire at its zenith, its roads stretching like veins across continents, its ships sailing boldly across the glittering expanse of the Mediterranean Sea. The scent of exotic spices mingling with the earthy aroma of stone and the metallic tang of coinage filled the air. In the grandest homes bathed in the soft glow of oil lamps, a new textile appeared, shimmering with an otherworldly luster, rustling with every movement of its wearer. This was a fabric of such exquisite beauty and rarity that it seemed to embody the very essence of wealth and prestige, pulling distant lands closer with every desired thread. The evening wind drifting through open windows seemed to carry the faint, sweet perfume of the distant east, beckoning the mighty empire to reach further than ever before. At its height, the Roman Empire was an unparalleled power, a vast dominion that embraced the entire Mediterranean world, stretching from the chilly fringes of Britain to the sun-scorched lands of the Middle East. Its urban centers, from the monumental heart of Rome itself to bustling ports like Alexandria and Antioch, pulsed with life ambition and an insatiable appetite for the finer things. Roman citizens, enjoying unprecedented prosperity, sought out luxuries that would enhance their lives, adorn their homes, and proclaim their status. While their own artisans produced marvels of craftsmanship, there were certain goods that could only be found far away in lands almost mythical in their distance. This vast demand, fueled by an expansive economy and a taste for the exotic, turned the Roman Empire into the ultimate Western terminus for the ancient world's burgeoning trade networks. Among these highly coveted imports, silk reigned supreme, shimmering with an almost legendary allure. It was known simply as Ceres cloth, by the Romans a reference to the distant land of silk, China. The fine, light, and exquisitely soft fabric became the ultimate status symbol worn by emperors, senators, and the wealthiest members of Roman society. Women draped themselves in its flowing folds, while men, perhaps with less public fanfare, also indulged in its luxurious comfort. Beyond silk, a treasure trove of other Eastern goods captivated the Roman imagination, fragrant spices from India, Ceylon, and Southeast Asia that transformed bland meals into exotic feasts, glittering gemstones like rubies and emeralds, rare perfumes, ivory, and exotic animals. To meet this demand, intrepid Roman merchants and their intermediaries established complex trade routes. While overland paths through Parthia and Syria were used, many goods, particularly spices, traveled by sea. Roman ships, guided by the predictable rhythms of the monsoon winds, ventured across the Indian Ocean to ports in India, bypassing some of the land-based middlemen and directly connecting with the maritime branches of the larger Asian trade networks. However, this luxurious craving came at a considerable price, creating significant economic and social tensions within the Roman Empire. The sheer volume of silk, spices, and other Eastern luxuries flowing into Rome led to a substantial outflow of gold and silver from the imperial treasury. This imbalance of trade was a constant source of concern for Roman authorities, who saw their precious metals vanishing eastward. Beyond the economic strain, many conservative Romans viewed the fascination with silk as a sign of moral decay and effeminacy. Philosophers like Seneca decried the transparent garments and extravagant displays of wealth, arguing that they undermined traditional Roman virtues of austerity and manliness. The logistical challenges of this vast trade were also immense. The journey was long and perilous, plagued by piracy on the seas, brigandage on land, and the constant risks of natural disaster. Each stage of the journey involved numerous middlemen, Parthians, Nabateans, Indian merchants, each taking their cut, driving up the final price and making the exotic goods even more precious and exclusive. Yet it was this relentless Roman desire for luxury and the exotic that provided a powerful engine for the ancient Silk Road, drawing distant civilizations into an unprecedented web of economic and cultural exchange. The empire's wealth created an immense vacuum, a powerful pull that stretched across continents, connecting the silk producers of China with the spice growers of India and the gemstone miners of Central Asia. The sheer scale of Roman demand transformed what might have been sporadic regional exchanges into a vibrant, interconnected global network, fostering technological advancements in shipbuilding and navigation, and promoting a silent, continuous flow of ideas alongside material goods. As the twilight deepened over the Roman lands, one could almost feel the enduring allure of the distant and the beautiful, a soft whisper carried on the wind, reminding us how human desires, even for the most indulgent of luxuries, can weave the world together in intricate and unexpected ways. Between the vast arid lands where the sun beat down upon ancient pathways and the distant empires that clamored for exotic goods lay a formidable plateau. Here the air often tasted of dust and the faint metallic tang of horse and armor. One could almost hear the distant thud of hooves, the rhythmic creak of wagon wheels, and the low guttural murmur of languages spoken by skilled horsemen. This was the domain of a powerful, resilient empire, a bridge and a barrier all at once, whose very existence shaped the flow of the world's most desired treasures. The sight of a lone caravanserai, its mud brick walls standing steadfast against a horizon painted in hues of ochre and deep violet at sunset, embodied their silent, pivotal role. They were the watchful guardians of the great crossroads, ensuring that the shimmering threads of silk and the fragrant whispers of spices passed through their hands, becoming an essential part of their own prosperity. The Parthian Empire, rising from the nomadic Parni tribe in the 3rd century BCE, steadily carved out a vast dominion, ultimately overthrowing the Hellenistic Seleucid rulers and reclaiming the ancient heartland of Persia. For nearly 5 centuries, from approximately 247 BCE to 224 CE, the Parthians stood as a formidable power strategically positioned as the crucial intermediary between the two great poles of the ancient world, the burgeoning Roman Empire in the west and the mighty Han Dynasty in the east. Their empire, characterized by a decentralized, almost feudal structure with powerful noble families, was united by a shared culture and a fierce pride in their equestrian prowess. Renowned for their Parthian shot, a devastating military tactic where horse archers would feign retreat before turning in the saddle to fire upon their pursuers, they were masters of their challenging terrain and the art of defense. It was this strategic position and their mastery of the vast land that made the Parthians the indispensable middlemen of the early Silk Road. As the land-based routes from China passed westward, they inevitably entered Parthian territory. The Parthians understood the immense value of this transit trade and shrewdly managed its flow. They imposed taxes on all goods passing through their lands, generating immense wealth for their empire and ensuring that a significant portion of the profit from Chinese silk and other Eastern luxuries remained within their borders. A key aspect of their policy was preventing direct contact between Roman and Chinese merchants. Instead, goods were typically exchanged at the Parthian borders or within designated trading cities like Ctesiphon or Ecbatana. A caravan from China would arrive, sell its goods to Parthian merchants, who would then transport them further west to meet merchants coming from the Roman sphere, often at cities like Palmyra or Dura Europos on their western frontier. This controlled exchange mechanism ensured that the Parthians maintained their critical role and maximized their financial gain, turning their empire into a vital, prosperous gatekeeper of global commerce. However, the Parthian Empire's pivotal position also made it a frequent battleground, particularly with the ever-expanding Roman Empire. For centuries, the two imperial giants engaged in a series of costly and often brutal wars over control of border regions Armenia and implicitly the lucrative trade routes themselves. These conflicts, though often localized, could severely disrupt the flow of goods along the Silk Road. Merchants found themselves navigating perilous detours, facing increased risks from bandits and opportunistic local rulers, or simply waiting for periods of peace. Beyond external pressures, the decentralized nature of the Parthian state, while providing resilience, also meant that powerful noble factions often vied for control, leading to periods of internal strife and civil war. These internal upheavals further weakened the central authority, making it harder to ensure the consistent security and smooth operation of the trade networks. Ultimately, centuries of exhausting conflict coupled with internal dissension gradually eroded the Parthian state, leading to its overthrow by a new, more centralized Persian dynasty, the Sassanians. Yet as the Parthian Empire faded into history, its profound and often overlooked legacy as the guardian of the Central Silk Road remained. For centuries, they had successfully managed the most vital land bridge between East and West, ensuring that the shimmering threads of silk and the fragrant whispers of spices continued their journey. Their strategic control forced a unique pattern of trade, shaping the early dynamics of intercontinental exchange. Though their reign was marked by conflict, it was also a period where the concept of connecting vast distant empires through controlled systematic trade became firmly established. As the last embers of twilight cooled over the ancient Parthian lands, one could almost imagine the quiet perseverance of the merchants and their camel trains. Their journey enabled by the very empire that stood between them, a silent testament to the complex interwoven tapestry of power profit and the enduring human desire for connection across vast and beautiful landscapes. In the vast heart of Central Asia, where the high mountain passes met the wide fertile valleys, the very air seemed to shimmer with a unique blend of cultures. One could almost hear the murmur of many tongues in a bustling market. Greek, Persian, Indian, and nomadic dialects mingling in a vibrant symphony of exchange. The sight of architectural styles blending subtly, a Hellenistic column here, a Buddhist stupa there, all under the same clear, expansive sky, spoke of a dynamic world where ideas and beliefs traveled as freely as trade goods. The soft, rhythmic chanting of Buddhist monks carried on the wind would drift over the dusty paths, offering solace and spiritual guidance to weary travelers. This was a land that welcomed influences from every direction, creating a new kind of bridge in the grand journey of the Silk Road, a place where not just material goods, but the deepest aspects of human thought would find a fertile ground to grow and spread. From the ashes of the Hellenistic kingdoms and the western fringes of Parthian power, a new empire, born from the nomadic Yuezhi people, rose to prominence in Central Asia, the Kushan Empire. Flourishing roughly from the 1st to the 3rd century CE, the Kushans established a vast domain that stretched from parts of present-day Uzbekistan and Tajikistan across Afghanistan and deep into the Indian subcontinent. Their strategic location was unparalleled, allowing them to act as a crucial link between the distant Roman Empire, the powerful Han Dynasty of China, and the rich lands of India. Unlike the Parthians, who primarily focused on controlling transit trade, the Kushans embraced a philosophy of cultural absorption and diffusion, creating a unique society that was a melting pot of influences from every direction. The Kushan Empire truly became the cultural nexus of the ancient world. Their rulers, notably the great king Kanishka, were patrons of a syncretic culture, allowing Greek, Persian, Indian, and Central Asian elements to flourish side by side, creating a vibrant artistic and intellectual synthesis. It was under their patronage that Buddhism experienced a remarkable flowering and expansion, especially northwards into Central Asia and then along the Silk Road into China. Buddhist monks and missionaries, often traveling alongside merchants, found a welcoming environment in Kushan cities like Peshawar, their winter capital, and Mathura. It was in this region that the unique Gandharan art style emerged, famously depicting the Buddha in human form, often with Hellenistic features and draped robes, a profound fusion of Eastern spiritual thought and Western artistic technique. Kushan coinage reflected this blend, featuring images of Greek Zoroastrian and Buddhist deities, signifying a truly globalized cultural outlook. Their cities buzzed not just with trade, but with philosophical debate, artistic creation, and religious devotion, acting as vital intellectual and spiritual way stations along the long journey of the Silk Road. However, even a vibrant cultural hub like the Kushan Empire faced its own set of internal and external pressures. The sheer size of their dominion, encompassing diverse ethnic and linguistic groups, presented constant challenges for maintaining central authority. Powerful regional governors and local chieftains often exerted considerable autonomy, leading to periods of internal fragmentation and potential unrest. From the west, the rise of the aggressive Sassanian Persian Empire in the 3rd century CE posed an existential threat, engaging the Kushans in prolonged and costly conflicts that gradually chipped away at their western territories. Simultaneously, fresh waves of nomadic incursions from the north, particularly from groups like the Huns, added to the external pressures, straining the empire's resources and ultimately leading to its decline. By the mid-4th century CE, the once mighty Kushan Empire had largely fractured into smaller independent kingdoms, losing its preeminent position as the central custodian of the Silk Road's cultural flow. Yet the legacy of the Kushan Empire, though often less celebrated than its grander neighbors, was profoundly significant for the Silk Road. They transformed it from merely a conduit for goods into a dynamic pathway for the silent, powerful movement of ideas, beliefs, and artistic styles. It was through the Kushans that Buddhism, with its message of peace and enlightenment, found its enduring path into East Asia, profoundly shaping the cultures of China, Korea, and Japan. Their syncretic art became a visual language that transcended borders, subtly influencing subsequent artistic traditions along the entire length of the trade routes. As the evening shadows lengthened over the ancient Central Asian valleys, one could almost feel the quiet reverence of the past, remembering how an empire built on the crossroads of cultures became a gentle beacon for the shared human journey of discovery. Carrying not just material wealth, but the very essence of spiritual yearning across continents. In the ancient heartland of Persia, where the dry desert wind carried the scent of ancient spices and the distant murmur of horsemen, a new power rose, inheriting the vast plains and vital crossroads from its predecessors. One could almost feel the weight of history in the air, the continuity of empire, yet with a distinct, renewed energy. The flicker of sacred flames in Zoroastrian fire temples cast dancing shadow symbols of a revitalized culture and a unified faith. The sight of elaborate silver plates and intricate textiles shimmering with rich, vibrant colors hinted at a refined taste and a profound craftsmanship. Under a vast, clear sky, the roads that had once borne Roman and Parthian footsteps now resonated with the tread of a new imperial might, destined to guard the western gates of the great trade routes, weaving its own golden threads into the ever-expanding tapestry of global exchange. After centuries of Parthian rule, the ancient Persian heartland experienced a powerful resurgence with the rise of the Sassanian Empire. Emerging from the province of Persis around 224 CE, the Sassanians, under their first king Ardashir-Sarkis, decisively overthrew the Parthians, establishing a more centralized and vigorous state that would endure for over 4 centuries until 651 CE. This new dynasty, proudly proclaimed itself the inheritor of the ancient Achaemenid legacy, revitalizing traditional Persian culture art and the Zoroastrian religion as a state faith. Their empire stretched across Mesopotamia, the Iranian plateau, and parts of Central Asia, strategically placing them as the formidable eastern frontier to the Roman and later Byzantine empires. They inherited not just the land, but the crucial role of controlling the flow of goods along the primary overland routes of the Silk Road from China and India into the Western world. The Sassanians quickly cemented their position as the dominant power guarding the central section of the Silk Road. They understood the immense economic and strategic value of this role. Building upon existing infrastructure, they maintained and secured the vital roads and established efficient systems for collecting customs duties and taxes on all goods passing through their vast domain. Caravans laden with Chinese silk, Indian spices, gemstones, and exotic perfumes poured into Sassanian cities like Ctesiphon, their magnificent capital on the Tigris River, which became a bustling metropolis of trade and cultural exchange. But the Sassanians were not just passive middlemen. They were also active contributors to the luxury goods economy of the Silk Road. Their exquisite silverware, intricately carved with hunting scenes and royal portraits, their luxurious textiles with rich patterns, and their famed Persian carpets became highly sought-after commodities in both the East and West. These goods traveled alongside silk and spices, enhancing the allure and diversity of products available along the ancient network, making the Sassanian lands a vital hub of both transit and production. However, the Sassanian Empire's dominance was constantly challenged primarily by its powerful western rival, the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. For centuries, these two mighty empires engaged in a relentless series of wars, often protracted and devastating, over border territories, control of strategic trade cities, and influence in the Caucasus. These conflicts frequently disrupted the established land routes of the Silk Road. When the main routes through Mesopotamia and Syria became battlegrounds, merchants were forced to seek longer, more arduous, and often less secure alternative paths, sometimes leading through the northern steppes or relying more heavily on sea routes across the Arabian Sea. These wars drained both empires of immense resources and manpower, weakening them over time. The strain of constant conflict, coupled with internal religious and political dissension, created vulnerabilities. It was these prolonged struggles that ultimately left both empires exhausted and unprepared for the swift, unexpected arrival of a new transformative force. From the south, the Arab Islamic armies. The Sassanian Empire weakened and fractured, succumbed to these formidable forces in the mid-7th century, bringing an end to the ancient Persian imperial line. Yet even after its political demise, the Sassanian Empire left an indelible mark on the Silk Road and the broader cultural landscape. Their sophisticated administrative systems, their refined artistic traditions, and their role as a crucial conduit for goods and ideas deeply influenced the succeeding Islamic caliphates. Persian language and culture refined under Sassanian rule continued to exert a profound influence across Central Asia and the Middle East, subtly shaping the routes and the interactions along them for centuries to come. The silent beauty of their silverwork and the intricate patterns of their textiles continued to inspire artisans along the trade routes long after their empire had faded. As the evening stars began to shimmer over the ancient Persian lands, one could almost feel the enduring flame of their civilization, a quiet beacon that, despite the tumult of wars, continued to illuminate the grand paths of global exchange, enriching the world with its unique blend of power and artistic grace. Across the sun-baked dunes and ancient caravan routes of the Arabian Peninsula, a new whisper began to rise, carried not by the wind, but by the fervent devotion of a burgeoning faith. One could almost feel the shimmering heat of the desert, giving way to the cool, fresh air of a new dawn, heralded by the hauntingly beautiful call to prayer, echoing from newly built minarets. The sight of the crescent moon serene and bright against the twilight sky seemed to symbolize a new beginning, a unifying force that would sweep across vast lands, linking distant peoples and fostering a profound era of learning and exchange. The rhythmic clatter of camel hooves, once carrying only goods, now seemed to beat to the pulse of a shared belief destined to revitalize and expand the ancient trade routes, drawing the disparate threads of the world into a new, vibrant tapestry. The Arabian Peninsula, for centuries a land of nomadic tribes and scattered trading settlements like Mecca and Medina, lay at the crossroads of established imperial powers. To its north lay the great rivalries of the Byzantine and Sassanian empires, whose conflicts often disrupted the flow of trade. But in the early 7th century CE, a transformative force emerged Islam revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. This new religion, with its emphasis on community justice and the pursuit of knowledge, rapidly unified the disparate tribes of Arabia. What followed was an astonishing period of expansion as the armies of the newly formed Islamic caliphates swept across the Middle East, North Africa, and into Central Asia and the Iberian Peninsula. By the 8th century, a vast unified Islamic empire stretched from Spain to the borders of China, inheriting many of the key trade routes that had once been divided between the Byzantines and Sassanians. This newly unified Islamic world became a powerful engine for trade and intellectual exchange, creating a vast economic zone that revitalized and expanded the Silk Road. A common language, Arabic, rapidly spread across this immense territory, simplifying communication for merchants and scholars alike. A unified legal framework based on Islamic law provided a stable and predictable environment for commerce, emphasizing fair dealings and the protection of contracts. New cities like the magnificent Baghdad, founded in 762 CE as the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, became bustling metropolises, serving as major hubs where goods from east and west converged. Merchants from China brought silk, porcelain, and paper. From India came spices, dyes, and gemstones, and from Europe, furs and timber. In return, the Islamic world offered luxurious textiles, exquisite metalwork glass, and highly sought-after scientific and philosophical texts. The Islamic emphasis on scholarship and learning, epitomized by institutions like Baghdad's House of Wisdom, meant that knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy flowed as freely as goods, profoundly enriching both the East and West. However, the vastness of the Islamic Empire, though a boon for trade, eventually led to its own internal complexities and periods of fragmentation. Over centuries, various caliphates and independent dynasties emerged, sometimes vying for power and influence, leading to localized conflicts and shifts in control over specific trade routes. The Sunni-Shia split, which emerged early in Islamic history, also contributed to political divisions that could impact stability. From the West, the Crusades beginning in the late 11th century introduced a new element of conflict, creating a volatile zone in the Levant and sometimes disrupting Mediterranean trade routes. While these conflicts did cause localized hardship and rerouting the inherent demand for Eastern goods in Europe, spurred in part by Crusader contact, paradoxically ensured the overall continuity of the Silk Road. Despite political shifts, the underlying economic and intellectual currents of the Islamic world continued to flow, adapting and finding new paths when older ones became too perilous. Yet the profound and enduring legacy of the Islamic Golden Age on the Silk Road cannot be overstated. The rise of Islam did not merely maintain the ancient roots. It breathed new life into them, extending their reach, enhancing their safety, and embedding them within a sophisticated, knowledge-driven civilization. Arabic became the lingua franca of international trade for centuries, and Islamic merchants and scholars acted as crucial intermediaries, translating and transmitting classical Greek, Indian, and Chinese knowledge across continents. Their advancements in navigation, cartography, and financial instruments further facilitated global exchange. As the evening stars began to shine over the myriad lands touched by Islamic civilization, one could almost feel the enduring light of their scholarship and the vibrant pulse of their commerce, a quiet testament to how a new spiritual and cultural force could bind the world together, fostering an era of unparalleled connection and a shared journey of human progress. The imperial city of Chang'an, under the majestic Tang Dynasty, pulsed with a vibrant energy, a living kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. One could almost hear the low hum of foreign languages mingling with Mandarin in the bustling markets, the distant clatter of hooves on paved streets, and the rhythmic beat of drums from Central Asian dancers. The air was thick with the scent of spices, exotic perfumes, and the delicate aroma of tea, while the shimmering silks that billowed from merchant stalls seemed to catch every whisper of light. This was a realm of unparalleled openness and dynamism, a golden age where China's influence reached far beyond its borders, and the Silk Road found its most brilliant expression. Under the gentle glow of countless lanterns, the city welcomed travelers and goods from every corner of the known world, transforming itself into the most cosmopolitan urban center of its time. The Tang Dynasty, reigning from 618 to 907 CE, presided over an era of profound cultural brilliance and political strength, often considered the Golden Age of imperial China. After centuries of fragmentation, the Tang reunified a vast and powerful empire, extending its influence deep into Central Asia, establishing protectorates and securing the crucial western routes. Their capital, Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, became the largest and most diverse city in the world, a true metropolis of over 1 million people, including tens of thousands of foreign residents. This era was characterized by its cosmopolitan spirit, its embrace of diverse cultures, and its remarkable intellectual and artistic flourishing. The Tang rulers, confident in their own strength, actively encouraged trade and cultural exchange, setting the stage for the Silk Road to reach its spectacular zenith. Under the secure and expansive umbrella of the Tang, the Silk Road experienced its most active and prosperous period. The empire's political stability and formidable military secured the long and arduous routes, providing an unprecedented level of safety for merchants and their caravans. The demand for Chinese goods in the West, particularly the luxurious silk, was insatiable. But other Chinese products also flowed outwards, exquisite porcelain sought after for its delicate beauty and strength, tea, a new and increasingly vital beverage, and paper gunpowder and lacquerware. In return, a vast array of exotic goods poured into China, precious gemstones from India glass, and intricate metalwork from the Middle East, horses from Fergana, and rare spices from Southeast Asia. Foreign merchants, Sogdians, Persians, Arabs, and Indians flocked to Chang'an and other major cities, establishing their own quarters and contributing to the city's rich tapestry. More than just goods, ideas, and beliefs traveled freely. Buddhism, already established, flourished anew, and other religions like Nestorian Christianity, Zoroastrianism, and Islam found communities and built temples within Tang China, enriching its spiritual landscape. However, the very vastness and internal complexities of the Tang Empire, coupled with external pressures, eventually led to a period of devastating upheaval. The turning point arrived in the mid-8th century with the cataclysmic and Kushan rebellion 763 CE. This immense internal conflict, led by a powerful general of Sogdian and Turkish descent, shattered the Tang's central authority, devastated its core provinces, and led to a profound loss of life and resources. While the rebellion was eventually suppressed, the Tang government was severely weakened, losing control over vast swaths of its western territories and diminishing its ability to secure the Silk Road. The vital garrisons and protectorates that had once safeguarded the trade routes were either withdrawn or fell to local powers, making travel increasingly perilous. New nomadic groups like the Uyghurs also gained influence in Central Asia, further complicating the political landscape and making the journey along the Silk Road less predictable and more dangerous for merchants. Yet, despite its eventual decline, the Tang Dynasty left an indelible and radiant legacy on the Silk Road and the world beyond. This Golden Age represented the pinnacle of intercontinental exchange, a period when cultures converged with astonishing fluidity, enriching each other with new ideas, technologies, and artistic inspirations. The very openness of Tang China fostered a cosmopolitan spirit that reshaped its own society, leading to advancements in poetry painting and administration that continue to inspire. The enduring allure of Tang silk porcelain and tea set a global standard for luxury and craftsmanship for centuries to come. As the evening stars began to shimmer over the ancient land of China, one could almost feel the vibrant echoes of Chang'an's Golden Age, a silent testament to how a period of unity and openness can create a luminous chapter in the story of human connection, its brilliance still shining softly across the vast expanse of time. Across the shimmering waters of the Golden Horn, under the watchful gaze of the monumental Hagia, Sofia, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, beat with an enduring, sophisticated rhythm. One could almost hear the distant murmur of countless languages spoken in its bustling markets, the soft splash of oars from elegant ships docking along its vast harbor, and the sweet lingering scent of incense mingling with exotic spices carried on the sea breeze. This was a city of gilded domes and intricate mosaics, a living bridge between continents where the legacy of Rome met the vibrant cultures of the East. Its light and enduring beacon of learning and faith shone across the dark ages, silently drawing the precious threads of the Silk Road ever westward, maintaining an ancient vital connection between worlds. Born from the division of the Roman Empire in the 4th century CE, the Byzantine Empire was the eastern continuation of Roman power centered on the magnificent city of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. Strategically positioned at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, it controlled the vital sea lanes connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, as well as crucial overland routes that skirted the edges of the Sassanian and later Islamic empires. For over 1,000 years, from its formal establishment in 330 CE until its fall in 1453 CE, Byzantium maintained a highly centralized government, a formidable military, and a deep, enduring Christian faith. Its sophisticated diplomacy and vast network of spies allowed it to navigate a complex geopolitical landscape, ensuring its survival and its crucial role in the flow of global trade, particularly with the distant East. The Byzantine Empire inherited and greatly intensified the Roman appetite for Eastern luxuries, making Constantinople the ultimate Western terminus for the Silk Road for centuries. The demand for shimmering silk, fragrant spices, glittering gemstones, and exotic perfumes was insatiable, fueling a continuous flow of goods from China, India, and beyond. Byzantine emperors and empresses adorned themselves in rich silk robes, their court ceremonies infused with the opulence imported from distant lands. However, the Byzantines were not content to simply be consumers. Recognizing the immense economic and strategic value of silk, they embarked on a remarkable feat of industrial espionage. In the 6th century CE, according to legend, 2 monks smuggled silkworm eggs out of China in hollowed-out bamboo canes, bringing the closely guarded secret of sericulture to the West. This audacious act allowed the Byzantine Empire to establish its own flourishing silk industry, producing exquisite fabrics that rivaled Chinese output. This self-sufficiency in silk production, coupled with their powerful navy, which secured Mediterranean trade, gave them immense economic leverage and control over the flow of luxury goods. However, the long history of the Byzantine Empire was a testament to its resilience in the face of near-constant upheaval. It was continuously pressed from all sides by the Sassanian Persians and later the Arab Islamic armies from the east, by various Slavic and nomadic tribes from the north, and by the Normans and other Western European powers from the west. These relentless wars drained its resources and often disrupted its trade routes. The greatest catastrophe came in 1204 CE with the Fourth Crusade, when Western European crusaders, instead of fighting in the Holy Land, sacked and occupied Constantinople. This act of unimaginable betrayal crippled the empire, stripping it of its wealth, shattering its political unity, and severely disrupting its vital trade networks. Although the Byzantines eventually reclaimed their capital, they never fully recovered their former strength or their dominant role in the Silk Road, leading to a gradual decline in their ability to secure and profit from the distant trade. Yet the legacy of the Byzantine Empire on the Silk Road, and indeed on the world, was profound and enduring. For centuries, it stood as a vital bridge, preserving classical Greek and Roman knowledge, while simultaneously acting as a conduit for the flow of Eastern innovations and artistic styles into Europe. They maintained the ancient threads of connection even when other empires fragmented or fell, ensuring that the demand for distant luxuries continued to drive exchange. Their own silk industry, born of ambition and ingenuity, added a new dimension to the global luxury market. As the twilight deepened over the ancient city of Constantinople, one could almost feel the enduring echoes of its golden domes and the silent, persistent hum of its long-vanished markets, a quiet testament to a resilient empire that through centuries of storm and change kept the precious channels of human connection, culture, and commerce flowing even when the path grew dim. Across the boundless, windswept steppes of Central Asia, where the sky stretched vast and unbroken from horizon to horizon, a new and formidable power began to stir. One could almost feel the earth vibrating with the distant thud of countless hooves, the rhythmic creak of wagon wheels, and the low guttural calls of nomadic herders. The air, crisp and clean, carried the scent of dry grass and the promise of endless movement. Here, under a sun that cast long, sharp shadows, arose a force that would briefly unify the known world, transforming the ancient Silk Road into a highway of unprecedented safety and exchange. The sight of a lone yurt village nestled against the golden light of sunset belied the immense silent power that was about to bring distant civilizations closer than ever before under a single overarching authority. From the rugged heartland of Mongolia, a scattered collection of nomadic tribes accustomed to the harsh realities of steppe life and masterful horsemanship were unified by the extraordinary vision and will of Genghis Khan in the late 12th and early 13th centuries. What followed was an astonishing explosion of power and conquest, creating the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever known. By the mid-13th century, the Mongol Empire stretched from Eastern Europe to the shores of East Asia, encompassing China, Central Asia, Persia, and parts of Russia. This immense dominion, forged through military, might paradoxically ushered in a period of unprecedented peace and stability across vast regions, transforming the landscape of global interaction and bringing the fragmented roots of the Silk Road under a single powerful authority. This period, often referred to as the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, marked a golden age for the overland Silk Road. For the first time in centuries, a single political entity controlled the entire length of the main land routes from China to the Middle East, eliminating the need for merchants to navigate multiple, often hostile borders and pay countless tolls to different regional powers. The Mongols, though fierce warriors, were shrewd rulers who understood the value of trade. They actively encouraged commerce, protecting merchants, establishing new trade routes, and even setting up a vast courier system. Of relay stations that, while designed for imperial communication, also benefited travelers and traders. Banditry. A perennial threat to caravans was largely suppressed under the Mongols' stern rule. As a result, goods, ideas, and people could travel with a newfound ease and safety. It was during this period that famous European travelers like Marco Polo ventured deep into China, bringing back tales of unimaginable wealth and sophisticated culture, inspiring further exchange. Silk, spices, porcelain, and paper flowed westward, while European silver textiles and technologies moved eastward, fostering a truly globalized commercial landscape. However, the very vastness that defined the Mongol Empire eventually contributed to its fragmentation and decline. By the late 13th and early 14th centuries, the unified empire began to fracture into a number of independent khanates: the Yuan Dynasty in China, the Golden Horde in Russia and Eastern Europe, the Ilkhanate in Persia, and the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia. While these successor states maintained some level of interaction, their internal rivalries and conflicts often led to renewed instability along the Silk Road. The breakdown of unified control meant that local tolls and banditry began to re-emerge, making the journeys more perilous and less profitable. The decline of the Yuan dynasty in China in particular led to a more isolationist policy, further dimming the light of direct east-west overland trade. The sheer scale of the empire also meant that disease, once confined to smaller regions, could now spread with frightening speed. Yet despite its relatively short lifespan as a unified entity, the Mongol Empire left an extraordinary and enduring legacy on the Silk Road. Their period of unprecedented unity and peace had profoundly transformed the dynamics of global exchange, fostering an era of intensive cultural, technological, and intellectual cross-pollination. Innovations like printing gunpowder and the compass originating in China diffused rapidly westward, shaping the course of European history. Artistic styles and religious practices also traveled along these newly secured paths, enriching civilizations from Venice to Beijing. The Mongols had inadvertently created the most integrated and accessible overland trade network the world had ever seen, proving that even a vast militarily imposed peace could lead to the quiet, powerful blossoming of global connection. As the evening stars began to twinkle over the immense plains once traversed by the Mongol armies, one could almost feel the silent echoes of countless journeys, a gentle reminder of a time when a single powerful authority briefly brought the world closer, creating a luminous yet fleeting golden age of passage. A new chill began to creep across the vast Eurasian landmass, colder than any winter wind, and far more silent. One could almost feel the unnatural quiet descending upon once bustling cities, hear the muffled tolling of bells no longer celebrating, but lamenting. The scent of fear mingled with the bitter aroma of desperation hung heavy in the air. This was not the whisper of trade, nor the thunder of conquering armies, but the chilling breath of an unseen force, traveling along the very pathways that had brought prosperity and connection. It moved unseen, carried by the subtle rhythm of a merchant's journey, a pilgrim's step, or a ship's gentle sway. The sun, though still bright, seemed to cast longer, more ominous shadows over deserted markets and abandoned homes as the world held its breath unknowingly, facing a darkness that would redefine its very fabric. The mid-14th century stood as a testament to the interconnectedness of the world that the Silk Road had so diligently woven. The Pax Mongolica, while ensuring an era of remarkable safety and exchange, had inadvertently created a superhighway not just for goods and ideas, but for something far more sinister. From its likely origins in the high steppes of Central Asia, or perhaps the distant corners of China, a deadly bacterium, Yersinia pestis, began its insidious journey. Carried by fleas clinging to the fur of black rats, these unseen passengers hitched rides on the very same caravans that brought shimmering silks and fragrant spices to the west. The bustling trade cities, Samarkand, Baghdad, Tabriz, Kaffa, became unwitting way stations for this invisible traveler, unknowingly relaying it further along the intricate network of land and sea routes that connected the vibrant heart of Asia to the eager markets of Europe. This silent traveler was the Black Death, a plague of unprecedented virulence that swept across Eurasia with devastating speed and efficacy. Appearing in Europe around 1347 CE, after having ravaged parts of Asia for years, it unleashed a cataclysmic wave of death that profoundly reshaped the human population and the world it inhabited. Entire villages where emptied cities saw their populations decimated, and the very structure of society began to fracture under the relentless onslaught. Estimates vary, but it's believed that the plague claimed between 30% and 60% of Europe's population, and likely similar numbers across the Middle East and parts of Asia. The immediate impact on the Silk Road was catastrophic. Merchants perished, often far from home. Trade ceased as cities closed their gates. Fear of contagion halted caravan movements. The vibrant exchange that had defined centuries of interaction withered as the fear of death outweighed the desire for distant luxuries. The widespread death caused by the Black Death brought profound and sweeping upheavals. Trade routes that had buzzed with activity fell silent. The scarcity of labor led to dramatic shifts in economic power and social structures. Fields lay untended, workshops stood idle, and the very mechanisms of commerce ground to a halt. Goods that had once flowed freely became scarce. Prices soared, and trust between communities often dissolved into suspicion and fear. The psychological toll was immense, leading to widespread despair, questioning of authority, and profound changes in religious and philosophical thought. The once dominant land routes of the Silk Road, already facing challenges from internal fragmentation in the Mongol successor states, were dealt a fatal blow by this invisible enemy. Merchants, if they dared to travel, sought new, often longer sea routes that bypassed the infected land masses, inadvertently setting the stage for a dramatic shift in global commerce. Yet from the immense shadow of the Black Death, a new world, albeit slowly, began to emerge, carrying within it the seeds of transformation. While the plague devastated populations and disrupted established routes, it also indirectly led to new opportunities and reconfigurations of power. The decline of overland trade encouraged exploration for alternative sea routes, a vital impulse for the age of exploration that would follow. The demographic shifts altered labor dynamics, laying groundwork for changes in feudal systems and economic innovation. The profound experience of vulnerability and loss quietly shaped human thought and resilience for centuries. As the twilight deepened over the lands that had endured such darkness, one could almost feel the silent, poignant echoes of lives lost. Yet also the enduring spirit of humanity, slowly, cautiously finding new ways to connect and to build. Forever changed by the invisible journey that swept across the great trade routes of the world. As the echoes of the Great Plague slowly faded from memory, a new kind of yearning began to stir in the Western lands, not for forgotten silks carried by weary caravans, but for the boundless, shimmering expanse of the open ocean. One could almost hear the distant roar of waves crashing against unfamiliar shores, smell the bracing tang of salt and tar carried on the sea breeze, and see the silhouette of a new kind of vessel, sleek and ambitious, rising against the horizon. The very light of dawn seemed to promise new beginnings, a world beyond the known maps where the paths of trade would no longer be confined to dusty land routes. The human spirit, ever restless and hungry for the exotic, began to look beyond the perils of land towards the infinite blue, where the wind would fill sails instead of rustling through ancient caravans, whispering tales of new routes to ancient treasures. Emerging from the long shadows cast by the Black Death and the subsequent societal shifts, Europe in the late medieval and early modern periods experienced a powerful surge of renewed intellectual curiosity and economic ambition, a blossoming often called the Renaissance. The continent had grown accustomed to the silk, spices, and exotic goods flowing from the east, but the traditional overland routes of the Silk Road were increasingly problematic. The fragmentation of the vast Mongol Empire into smaller warring khanates had led to a resurgence of insecurity and banditry along the Central Asian pathways. Furthermore, the rising power of the Ottoman Empire, which steadily expanded across the Middle East and southeastern Europe, exerted control over vital land routes and sea access points to the Mediterranean, imposing heavy tolls and effectively monopolizing much of the east-west trade through existing channels. This created a powerful incentive for European powers to seek alternative routes to bypass the middlemen and find direct access to the coveted markets of Asia. The driving force behind this monumental shift was a potent blend of desire, ingenuity, and ambition. The lure of immense profits from the spice trade. For example, spices like pepper cloves and cinnamon were more valuable than gold by weight in Europe was a powerful motivator. But it was the remarkable advancements in navigation, shipbuilding, and cartography that made this dream a tangible possibility. The development of new ship designs like the Portuguese caravel, with its maneuverable lateen sails and sturdy hull, allowed for longer, more robust oceanic voyages. Innovations like the astrolabe and improved compasses originally from the East, but perfected in Europe, enabled mariners to chart courses with unprecedented accuracy across vast oceans. This confluence of economic necessity, intellectual curiosity, and technological prowess sparked what would become known as the Age of Exploration. Pioneering voyages, first by Portugal seeking a route around Africa to India, then famously by Spain seeking a westward passage to the east, began to unravel the mysteries of the global map, promising direct access to the fabled riches of Asia. As the new sea lanes opened and proved viable, the ancient overland Silk Road gradually, almost imperceptibly, began to dim. The immense expense, the prolonged dangers, and the multiple intermediaries involved in traversing the land routes became less attractive when compared to the still perilous but increasingly direct maritime journeys. Goods could be transported in far larger quantities by ship than by caravan, significantly reducing unit costs. The rise of new Atlantic-facing ports in Portugal, Spain, England, and the Netherlands gradually shifted the center of global economic power away from the traditional Mediterranean and Central Asian hubs. While some land trade continued, particularly regional exchanges, the long-distance intercontinental flow of luxury goods that had defined the Silk Road for millennia dwindled. The once bustling caravanserai across Central Asia slowly fell into disuse, their mud brick walls crumbling back into the dust. Silent witnesses to a bygone era as the world's commercial arteries found a new watery path. Yet even as the ancient land routes faded into history, the Age of Exploration carried forward the enduring human desire for connection and discovery that had defined the Silk Road. It represented not an end, but a grand transformation of global trade, leading to a truly interconnected world spanning oceans rather than continents. The very existence of the Silk Road had cultivated the taste for distant luxuries, the knowledge of faraway lands, and the technological curiosity that now fueled these oceanic voyages. The threads of connection once spun from silk and carried by camel were now woven into the vast, restless currents of the ocean, propelled by a new kind of wind. As the evening moon rose over the vast, shimmering seas, one could almost feel the enduring spirit of discovery, now sailing on uncharted waters, forever expanding the human journey of exploration and the silent, profound rhythm of global exchange. As the great sailing ships embraced the vast, boundless oceans carrying goods and ambitions across the globe, the ancient land routes of the Silk Road, though no longer the pulsing arteries of world commerce, did not simply vanish. Instead, they transformed, fading into a quiet, enduring presence across the deserts and mountains they once traversed. One could almost hear the whisper of the wind through crumbling arches, the faint rustle of dry dust in forgotten courtyards, and the distant, unseen murmur of 1,000 lost conversations. The air, though, still held the faint scent of ancient travels of spices and silk that had once journeyed thousands of miles. The sun setting over the vast, empty landscapes cast long, melancholic shadows over the silent ruins of once bustling caravanserai, now serving as monuments to a bygone era. They were ghost roads, their spirit lingering a silent testament to the countless footsteps that had once connected continents. The shift of global trade to maritime routes following the age of exploration meant that the overland Silk Road for centuries, the lifeblood of East-West exchange, gradually lost its preeminence. Its grand unified flow splintered into regional exchanges, and many of its once flourishing cities, starved of the vibrant commerce that sustained them, slowly began to wither. Yet even as the caravans grew smaller and less frequent, the profound cultural imprints left by millennia of interaction remained subtly woven into the fabric of societies across Eurasia. Architectural styles inspired by distant lands could still be seen in temples and palaces. Artistic motifs carried by traveling artisans adorned local crafts. Religious practices like Buddhism and Nestorian Christianity that had spread along these paths continued to shape the spiritual lives of communities, even if their direct connection to a vibrant trade route had diminished. Languages, once a lingua franca of commerce, had left loanwords and influences in their wake. These enduring whispers of the past manifested in countless ways. In the quiet solitude of the desert, the magnificent ruins of ancient Silk Road cities like Merv Samarkand or Dunhuang stood as poignant reminders of their former glory, their crumbling walls holding tales of emperors, merchants, and monks. Within their dust, archaeologists would later unearth priceless artifacts, fragments of silk, ancient coins, scrolls, and frescoes, all bearing witness to the incredible cultural fusion that once thrived there. Even where cities vanished, the memory of their purpose often persisted in local lore, in the names of mountains or passes, or in the very genetic tapestry of populations who had intermingled along these routes for centuries. The movement of people. Whether merchants, pilgrims, or nomadic tribes had created a human mosaic that transcended political boundaries, ensuring that the legacy of connection would live on often unseen beneath the surface of daily life. However, as the centuries rolled on the once vibrant memory of the overland Silk Road, as a unified phenomenon began to fade from the conscious narratives of the burgeoning global powers whose focus was now firmly on the oceans. Many of its forgotten cities became lost to the sands of time, their stories silenced by the relentless desert wind or the slow encroachment of vegetation. For a long period, these ancient pathways lay mostly dormant, explored only by intrepid travelers or local traders conducting regional commerce. It was not until the 19th and 20th centuries, with the rise of modern archaeology and historical scholarship, that a renewed interest in these ancient connections emerged. Explorers and scholars painstakingly began to piece together the fragmented story of the Silk Road, unearthing its lost treasures and deciphering its forgotten languages, slowly bringing its monumental significance back into the light of historical understanding. Yet the quiet, enduring legacy of the Silk Road continues to shape our world in subtle, profound ways. It reminds us that humanity's story is one of continuous connection, of an unbreakable desire to reach beyond horizons, to exchange, and to learn. The globalized world we inhabit today, with its vast networks of commerce and cultural exchange, stands on the ancient shoulders of these pioneering roots. From the spices in our kitchens, to the fabrics we wear, from the philosophies that guide our thoughts, to the very words we speak. The invisible threads of the Silk Road continue to bind us, a silent testament to the millennia of human ingenuity and interaction. As the gentle glow of the moon illuminates the quiet world, one can almost feel the enduring whispers of those ancient paths, a soft reminder that even when grand roots fade, the spirit of human connection remains forever etched into the landscape of time. In our modern world, where the soft glow of screens connects us across vast distances, and the hum of unseen networks carries information around the globe in an instant, the ancient pathways of the Silk Road might seem like distant dreams. Yet if one listens closely, beyond the immediate sounds of our busy lives, a quiet echo persists. One can almost feel the gentle pulse of distant commerce, the faint whisper of conversations spanning continents, and the subtle shimmer of cultural exchange that has always bound humanity together. The light from a distant city, whether ancient or modern, still beckons, reminding us that the human spirit's desire to connect and explore remains as strong as ever. The very air around us, filled with the unseen currents of global interaction, carries the lingering scent of ancient spices and the enduring spirit of journeys past as the world looks back to its oldest threads to weave new patterns of connection. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, as the world became increasingly interconnected through technology and globalized markets, a renewed fascination with the historical Silk Road began to emerge. Scholars revisited ancient texts, archaeologists unearthed forgotten cities, and travelers embarked on journeys along the old routes, seeking to understand the profound legacy of this ancient network. The concept of the Silk Road, once a romanticized idea, became a framework for understanding millennia of East-West interaction. This rediscovery was not merely academic. It resonated with a deeper human longing for connection, a recognition of shared heritage, and an understanding of how deeply intertwined our histories truly are. The stories of caravans, empires, and cultural fusions began to inspire a new generation, bringing the silent echoes of the past into the bright light of contemporary awareness. This renewed interest soon manifested in ambitious modern initiatives. Most notably, China launched the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, a vast development strategy that explicitly invokes the spirit and roots of the ancient Silk Road. This ambitious project aims to build a sprawling network of land and sea infrastructure roads, railways, ports, pipelines, and communication networks connecting China with Central Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. The initiative seeks to foster economic cooperation, facilitate trade, and promote cultural exchange on a massive, unprecedented scale, mirroring the historical connections, but with the technologies and ambitions of the 21st century. It represents a powerful testament to the enduring allure and perceived strategic importance of these ancient pathways, aiming to create a new era of global integration and prosperity by re-energizing the very arteries that once defined the world. However, the complexities of reweaving ancient threads into a modern tapestry are immense and often fraught with challenges. Modern initiatives, despite their grand ambitions, navigate a world far more intricate than that of ancient empires. Geopolitical tensions between nations, concerns over economic disparities, and debt burdens, environmental impacts of massive infrastructure projects, and the need for equitable benefits for all participating countries present significant hurdles. The spirit of cooperation that characterized some periods of the ancient Silk Road must contend with the realities of modern statecraft, competing interests, and diverse political systems. Translating the simplicity of ancient exchange into the intricate web of global supply chains and international diplomacy requires immense foresight and careful navigation, ensuring that the legacy of connection is balanced with the demands of sustainable and inclusive development. Yet as the last rays of the setting sun paint the modern landscapes of Eurasia, one can still perceive the profound and enduring legacy of the Silk Road, reaching from the distant past to the vibrant present. It serves as a timeless reminder that humanity's story is fundamentally one of connection. A continuous weaving of threads between disparate cultures driven by curiosity need and the universal desire for a shared understanding. Whether by caravan or by container ship, by ancient scroll or by digital signal, the spirit of exchange perseveres. The Silk Road in its quiet, enduring presence teaches us that the paths we forge today, like those laid down millennia ago, are not just conduits for goods but profound channels for ideas, cultures, and the very essence of human experience. It is a luminous thread stretching from the deepest past into the future, softly guiding our dreams of a more connected world. As the soft light of the lamp gently dims and the world outside slowly settles into the hushed quiet of night, let the ancient whispers of the Silk Road drift into your thoughts. Imagine the silent footsteps of countless travelers, the creak of camel saddles under a starlit sky, the rustle of silk in distant lands. Feel the cool desert air, the warmth of a shared fire, the quiet wisdom of centuries of exchange. These pathways unseen now still echo with the beauty of human connection, of ingenuity, and of the tireless quest for discovery. They remind us that even the greatest distances can be bridged by a thread of shared purpose, a desire for beauty, and a simple gesture of exchange. Let these stories carried by the timeless wind lull you gently, quietly into a restful slumber. Sweet dreams.